Some people fight for justice. Others fight for a lifetime supply of sandwiches. And then there are the visionaries who look at the US legal system, the thing that decides life and death, and think, yes, this is the perfect place to complain about my dry cleaning bill. These aren't minor grievances. These are full-blown, tie-wearing adults walking into court with the seriousness of a murder trial and the logic of a toddler suing gravity. It's a level of absurdity that turns judges into babysitters and makes you wonder if civilization was a mistake. And if you think suing God, Batman, or a pair of pants is the peak of human stupidity, oh no, we're just getting warmed up. 1. A man once sued a dry cleaner for losing his pants. Not a car, not a house, not his dignity. Pants. And he didn't just ask for a refund, he demanded $54 million. That's right, a number so cartoonishly large it could probably fund NASA's next Mars mission, all because his trousers took a detour. He argued the store's "Satisfaction Guaranteed" sign was legally binding, as if the universe itself promised him eternal pant security. The case dragged on for years, nearly bankrupting the immigrant family running the shop. Imagine being in court, watching lawyers debate the existential value of khakis, like it's the Magna Carta. The punchline? He was a judge himself. A man trusted to interpret the law tried to make pants worth more than small countries. And people still wonder why no one trusts the justice system. 2. In Nebraska, a state senator decided the real threat to America wasn't war, wasn't corruption, wasn't even potholes. It was God. So he sued him. Yes, him. The omnipotent creator of the universe, dragged into court like a rowdy teenager who broke curfew. The senator's complaint was that God allowed fearsome floods and horrendous hurricanes, which is basically like calling customer service for Earth and demanding to speak to the manager. A judge actually opened the case, because technically, nothing in US law says you can't sue God. It was only dismissed because, shockingly, God didn't show up to be served papers. No mailing address, no forwarding P.O. box in heaven. Somewhere, an attorney probably billed hours trying to figure out if angels could deliver subpoenas. So yes, in Nebraska, God isn't undefeated because he's divine. It's because he's unlisted. 3. One inmate in Virginia decided to test the boundaries of human stupidity by suing himself. He claimed his decision to get drunk and commit crimes violated his own civil rights and demanded $5 million in damages. Now here's the genius part. Since he was in prison and broke, he insisted the state pay him on behalf of himself. Imagine being the judge, reading that, and realizing this isn't even a lawsuit, it's performance art, a legal snake eating its own tail. The man essentially tried to cash a check written in crayon from himself to himself, with taxpayers footing the bill. The court obviously dismissed it, but it's now a legendary example in law schools. Students study it the way biologists study viruses. Not because it's useful, but because it shows how low the human brain can sink. 4. Over in Turkey, the mayor of a city called Batman, yes, Batman, threatened to sue Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan. His claim? The Dark Knight movies stole his city's name without permission, as if Gotham was out here siphoning property taxes. He even said the movies caused psychological trauma and crime in Batman, Turkey, as though Christian Bale growling into a microphone actually made Turkish teens start robbing stores. The case never made it to court, but the fact it was even attempted is peak comedy. Imagine being Batman's lawyer, preparing for trial and having to argue, "Your Honor, my client predates DC Comics." Somewhere in the multiverse, Bruce Wayne is rolling his eyes and writing a cease and desist letter back to the mayor. Fun fact, this is now unofficially known as the "Don't Sue Batman" rule, which, honestly, should apply everywhere. 5. A psychic in Romania sued NASA because their Mars rover was trespassing on her property. Her property being, and I swear I'm not making this up, the planet Mars. She claimed she was the official ambassador of Mars, and that the rover's cold metal wheels disrupted her psychic vibrations. She wanted $300 million in damages, which is a bold ask considering she couldn't even produce a deed to Mars. The case was dismissed instantly, but it did force courts to clarify something no one thought they'd ever need to say. You must be from planet Earth to file a lawsuit. That's right, Earth citizenship is now legally required, just in case an alien lawyer from Jupiter tries to demand alimony. It's also the only time NASA had to respond to a complaint that essentially boiled down to, "Get off my lawn," in space. 6. Ever bought a Starbucks iced coffee and thought, wow, there's too much ice in this cup? Most people just drink it anyway. But one woman in Chicago decided this was fraud on a galactic scale and launched a $5 million class action lawsuit. Her argument: if you order 24 ounces of coffee and half of it is ice, you've been scammed. The judge tossed it immediately, pointing out that even a child knows ice displaces liquid. But honestly, she might have been onto something. If Starbucks actually lost, we'd be living in a world where measuring ice cubes could determine billion-dollar payouts. Imagine lawyers with rulers, carefully counting frozen water like archaeologists dusting dinosaur bones. Instead, the court basically told her, "You can't sue physics." And humanity collectively sighed in relief, clutching their overpriced lattes. 7. In the 90s, a man sued Budweiser because their commercials showed guys drinking beer and instantly being surrounded by beautiful women. He claimed he drank Bud Light, and shockingly, women did not materialize like Pokemon. His lawsuit demanded damages for emotional distress. Imagine walking into court and announcing, "Your Honor, my beer didn't summon bikini models." The judge dismissed it, of course, but in the process set a legal precedent known as puffery. Basically, companies can lie in ads as long as the lies are so stupid no sane person would believe them. Which means, thanks to this man, we all get to legally acknowledge that drinking light beer makes you bloated and sad, not irresistible. He didn't get the girls, but he did get the honor of being the reason no one can sue Red Bull for failing to grow wings. 8. California got so tired of frivolous lawsuits that they invented a new legal category, the Vexatious litigant. Translation: if you file hundreds of nonsense cases, the court officially bans you from filing any more without permission. It's like a restraining order against your own stupidity. One man earned this title after suing over 300 times about a minor car accident. He sued the driver, the tow truck, the mechanic, probably the guy who invented asphalt. At some point, the legal system had to say, "You're done. No more lawsuits. Go touch grass." The irony, of course, is that the people who most need this rule are the least capable of recognizing they qualify for it. Being labeled vexatious is basically the court stamping your forehead with "Do not let near" pens. It's the judicial equivalent of child-proofing society. 9. A Michigan man won Subway's Sandwiches for Life contest and then sued Subway because their definition of life wasn't literal enough. Instead of infinite free sandwiches until the heat death of the universe, he got about $13,000 in gift cards. He argued that "for life" meant he should never pay for a footlong again, and honestly, I almost respect it. Imagine the sheer audacity of standing in court and saying, "Your Honor, I demand bread until I die." The judge sided with Subway, ruling that companies get to define their own contest terms. Which makes sense, because if this guy won, Subway would still be contractually obligated to hand over turkey subs to his grandchildren in the year 2021-2090. Somewhere in Michigan, he's probably still bitter, eating his last stale gift card sandwich, dreaming of the empire of cold cuts he was promised. 10. Everyone knows the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit. It's become the punchline for stupid lawsuits. But here's the twist. It wasn't stupid at all. Stella Liebeck, a 79-year-old woman, spilled coffee so hot it caused third-degree burns and skin grafts. McDonald's had been serving coffee at a temperature that could double as industrial paint remover, despite hundreds of prior complaints. She sued not for millions, but just to cover her medical bills. McDonald's dragged it out, then launched a PR campaign making her look greedy. And guess what? It worked. For decades, people thought she was the villain, when in reality she exposed corporate negligence. The only reason this case is seen as dumb is because McDonald's was better at marketing than they were at serving human-safe coffee. It's not the dumbest lawsuit, it's the smartest cover-up. 11. In one of my personal favorites, a monkey took a selfie. Yes, a literal monkey. A photographer left his camera unattended, and a macaque snapped a perfectly framed, grinning photo. The picture went viral, which is when PETA decided to sue, not the photographer, but on behalf of the monkey. They argued the monkey owned the copyright. A U.S. court had to sit down and legally declare that animals cannot own intellectual property. which means some poor judge had to look at lawyers with straight faces and say, "No, Your Honor, the monkey doesn't get royalties." The photographer kept the rights, but honestly, if anyone deserved payment, it was the monkey. He's the only one who actually did the work. That's the story of how we clarified that capitalism remains strictly human, even if monkeys are better at selfies than most influencers. 12. There was a lawsuit against Universal Studios because their Fast and Furious ride didn't live up to the trailers. A man argued the ads promised Vin Diesel-level thrills, but instead he got a shaky simulator that looked like Windows 95 graphics. He demanded damages for false advertising. The court threw it out. But here's the thing. This is exactly the kind of lawsuit that should exist. If Apple can get sued for slowing down iPhones, why can't Universal get sued for making a roller coaster that feels like a PowerPoint presentation? Sadly, the judge decided it fell under puffery again. Legal code for, "Come on, you didn't actually believe that, did you?" So Vin Diesel stays untouchable, family remains sacred, and one man had to go home still disappointed that his day at Universal Studios was not, in fact, furious enough. 13. One woman in New York tried to sue her nephew for hugging her too hard. She claimed his enthusiastic jump hug caused her to break her wrist, and she wanted $127,000. The kid was 8 years old. 8. Imagine being a child, giving your aunt the kind of hug Pixar movies are built on, only for her to drag you into court like you're a tiny mob boss. The case made headlines. The aunt became a national villain, and in the end, the jury sided with the kid. Of course they did. No one wants to live in a world where hugs come with legal disclaimers. The kid probably walked out of court with more fans than Spider-Man, while his aunt became the poster child for why lawyers drink. Moral of the story, hugs heal, unless you're related to a lawsuit. 14. In the early 2000s, a man sued Pepsi because their Pepsi Points catalog ad jokingly showed a fighter jet as a prize. He calculated how many points he'd need, realized it was technically possible to buy enough points, and demanded Pepsi hand him a $23 million Harrier jet. Pepsi argued it was clearly a joke. The man argued, "Then why didn't you put 'just kidding' on the ad?" The case went to court, and the judge ruled that no reasonable person would believe Pepsi would casually give away military hardware with a six-pack, which is fair. But also, given how much sugar is in soda, maybe Pepsi was trying to kill people. Either way, this lawsuit clarified a vital legal principle. Commercials are not binding military contracts, and somewhere, one man is still salty that his soda habit didn't earn him air superiority. 15. In 2013, a man in China sued his wife for being ugly. And I don't mean, "she said something mean ugly." I mean, he literally claimed she misled him about her looks. After they had kids, he noticed they looked suspiciously different, so she confessed she'd had major plastic surgery before they met. Instead of just processing that information like a human being, he dragged her into court. Shockingly, he won. The judge agreed she deceived him, and she had to pay damages. Which is insane because if we're suing people for false advertising, half of Instagram needs to lawyer up. Honestly, it says less about her face and more about his fragile ego. If the court system really worked, the damages would have been awarded to the kids for having the worst dad on the planet. 16. A man once tried to sue the weather service for getting the forecast wrong. He claimed the incorrect prediction ruined his weekend plans and caused him emotional distress. Imagine filing paperwork because your picnic got rained out. This wasn't even the only time. Multiple cases exist where people tried to drag meteorologists into court for the audacity of not controlling clouds. Judges usually toss these faster than yesterday's umbrella, but the fact they're filed at all proves something horrifying. Some people genuinely think meteorology is sorcery. Newsflash, we can't even predict the outcome of The Bachelor, let alone nature. If lawsuits could fix bad forecasts, Al Roker would have been serving life without parole decades ago. The reality is simple. It rains. The law can't stop it. Deal with it. 17. And then there's the guy who sued Anheuser-Busch because their ads showed guys drinking beer and being transported to tropical islands. He bought a six-pack, drank it, and shockingly, didn't wake up on a beach surrounded by models. His argument? False advertising. The court disagreed, setting yet another legal standard. Apparently, you can't sue a company for not delivering literal fantasy. But here's the kicker. This is basically the same argument as the Bud Light bikini guy. which means two separate adults thought beer was a magic portal to paradise. It's almost poetic. Two men united across time by the crushing realization that alcohol just makes you tired, bloated, and bad at karaoke. So yes, the legal system had to clarify, multiple times, that beer does not equal teleportation. And honestly, that's probably the saddest truth of all. 18. A man in California sued his dry cleaner for giving him the wrong pants after he specifically asked for a crease. That's right, he didn't just get pants back, he got pants without attitude. His argument was that these lifeless trousers ruined his image and therefore his career. Imagine standing in court saying, "Your Honor, I cannot possibly function in society with smooth, uncreased khakis." Somewhere in that courtroom, a jury was forced to stare at this man's legs, analyzing the emotional weight of pant creases like they were sacred relics. Meanwhile, people with actual problems, like medical bills or, crimes, had to wait their turn because Chad wanted his trousers emotionally compensated. If pants ever do rise up against humanity, this guy is the reason. The crease rebellion will begin in California, and honestly, they'd be justified. 19. A woman in New Jersey sued a theme park because she claimed the haunted house was too scary. Too scary. She walked into an attraction literally designed to terrify people, then called a lawyer because it succeeded. That's like suing Taco Bell because the burrito made you gassy. Her complaint was that an employee dressed as a monster chased her, which, shocker, is the point of a haunted house. She said she fell and injured herself while running away. The court dismissed it, but I kind of wish they hadn't. I'd love to see a jury forced to determine the legal threshold for scariness. Like, all right, zombies are fine, but if you make eye contact with a chainsaw clown for more than 3 seconds, that's assault. The lesson here: some people think horror should come with a warning label that just says, "Boo," but gently. 20. One man decided to sue Apple because his iPhone didn't make him immune to pornography. His argument was that Apple should have blocked adult content more aggressively, and since they didn't, they caused his addiction. Translation: he spent too much time on shady websites and decided it was Tim Cook's fault. Imagine the courtroom scene: a man explaining to a judge with a straight face that his private browsing history was actually corporate negligence. That's like suing Netflix because you binge-watched Tiger King instead of learning Spanish. The case was dismissed, of course, but not before the court had to hear phrases like erotic negligence and failure to protect moral integrity. Somewhere in Apple HQ, an employee had to log that lawsuit into the system while desperately trying not to picture exactly what kind of content this man was blaming them for. 21. In Israel, a woman sued a TV psychic for failing to remove her curse. She claimed she paid him thousands of dollars to lift her bad luck. And shockingly, it didn't work. She still had bad luck. Honestly, the only curse here was believing a guy on late-night television who says he can change your fate for 3 easy payments. But the court actually awarded her damages, ruling that the psychic engaged in false representation, which basically means, congratulations. The law just confirmed that curses aren't real. Somewhere out there, a lawyer is now billing hours as an expert in hex removal. And imagine being that psychic, trying to explain in court, "No, Your Honor, the vibes were strong, but Mercury was in retrograde." If I were the judge, I would have doubled her compensation purely for the humiliation of having to hear the phrase spiritual mismanagement on legal record. 22. A man in New York sued his parents for not loving him enough. Not abuse, not neglect, not loving him enough. His argument was that their emotional stinginess ruined his life, and therefore, they owed him money. I don't know about you, but if this case succeeded, every Thanksgiving in America would end with someone handing out invoices. Imagine a jury sitting there, forced to listen to decades of emotional baggage unpacked like a bad therapy session. In 1993, my father didn't clap at my spelling bee, Exhibit A. The case was dismissed, thankfully, but part of me wishes it went further, just to see if lawyers could start billing by the hug. The irony is that by suing his parents, he guaranteed they'd never love him again. That's not a lawsuit. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a suit and tie. 23. In 2014, a man sued Red Bull because he drank it and, shockingly, did not grow wings. His case argued that the slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings," was false advertising. The company settled out of court for $13 million, which is hilarious because it means somewhere thousands of people got checks in the mail as compensation for their unfulfilled dreams of flight. Imagine trying to cash that in at the bank. Yes, this money is because I did not achieve avian capabilities after drinking an energy drink. And the real kicker, Red Bull never even promised literal wings. They were counting on basic human intelligence to make the metaphor leap. But apparently, we needed a legal precedent to clarify that no, energy drinks will not make you airborne. Honestly, the only wings Red Bull ever gave anyone were ambulance helicopter rides. 24. A woman in China tried to sue her matchmaking agency because the man they set her up with was too ugly. She had paid a premium fee for high-quality introductions and felt deceived when her blind date showed up looking, in her words, like a farmer. First of all, nothing wrong with farmers. They feed you. Second of all, imagine being that poor guy, finding out your date not only rejected you, but also turned your face into a court case. That's next-level rejection. The agency defended itself by saying beauty is subjective, which, fair. But the fact that a judge had to look at this man, then decide whether his face constituted breach of contract, is almost cruel. This isn't law, it's America's Next Top Model, Court Edition. Somewhere Tyra Banks is shaking her head saying, "I was rooting for you, we were all rooting for you." 25. In Florida, a man sued a strip club because he said one of the dancers' heels injured his face during a performance. Now, normally you'd call that an accident. He called it an assault. He wanted damages for permanent emotional distress. Translation: he paid for a lap dance, got too close to the action, and ended up with a stiletto autograph. The case was thrown out, but imagine the court transcript. "Yes, Your Honor, I was injured during the performance of Pour Some Sugar on Me." Somewhere in that courtroom, the stenographer had to type the phrase pole-related injury without breaking into laughter. Honestly, if he'd won, half of Vegas would have gone bankrupt overnight. The truth is, if you buy front row seats at Cirque du Soleil, you accept the risk of a stray trapeze. Strip clubs are no different. 26. A man in Washington sued Michael Jordan for looking too much like him. Yes, the NBA legend. His claim was that people constantly mistook him for Jordan, and it caused him emotional distress. He demanded $832 million. Not a round number, not a million, not even a billion. $832 million. Imagine being the judge, trying not to laugh while looking at a man who looks absolutely nothing like Michael Jordan, demanding nearly $1 billion because of mistaken identity. Honestly, the only thing this man had in common with Jordan was probably 2 legs and a face. The irony is, if he really was mistaken for Jordan, he could have just leaned into it. Free upgrades, autographs, maybe even a chance to dunk on strangers in pickup games. Instead, he decided to sue the actual Michael Jordan. That's not identity theft. That's identity whining. 27. In the UK, a man sued his surgeon because his wife left him after his nose job. The logic went, "You made me look worse, therefore my marriage ended, therefore you owe me money." Never mind that maybe his marriage had issues before the rhinoplasty. No, it was the nose. Always the nose. The court threw it out, but I can't stop picturing the trial. The surgeon standing there like, "Sir, I reshaped your cartilage. I didn't sign your divorce papers." It's the kind of complaint that makes you wonder if lawyers should start charging by the insecurity. Honestly, if cosmetic surgery really had that kind of power, half of Hollywood would be bankrupt from wrongful breakups. Imagine suing for damages because your Botox didn't get you promoted. This man basically tried to legally declare his nose the center of the universe. 28. A man in India sued his parents for giving birth to him without his consent. His argument was that life itself is suffering, and therefore his parents owed him for bringing him into existence. Yes, the world's first anti-natalist lawsuit. Imagine that courtroom. "Your Honor, I didn't ask to be born." Technically, he's not wrong. None of us did. But turning that into a legal case is peak philosophy student energy. The parents' defense was simple. "We love him," which honestly makes it worse. The irony is, if he'd won, every teenager could legally bill their parents for existing. Every slammed bedroom door would come with an invoice. He eventually dropped the case, probably because he realized the only reason he had lawyers, courts, and language to complain with is because his parents gave him life in the first place. Oops. 29. A man in New York sued his neighbor because their Wi-Fi signal was giving him headaches. He argued he was allergic to radiation from wireless routers. The case forced experts to testify on something called electromagnetic hypersensitivity, which is basically when people think Wi-Fi is trying to kill them. Science says it isn't real, but this guy was convinced he was being bombarded by invisible death beams. He demanded his neighbor shut off their internet permanently. Imagine trying to live in 2023 without Wi-Fi, because the guy next door insists your router is a microwave sniper rifle. The case was dismissed, but I like to imagine the judge just sighed, pulled out his phone, and Googled, "Does Wi-Fi cause headaches?" in front of him. Spoiler, it doesn't. The only thing Wi-Fi has ever destroyed is family dinners and human attention spans. 30. In 2010, a man sued Google because his GPS told him to walk onto a highway. He followed the instructions, got hit by a car, and decided the app was at fault. Not his legs, not his eyes, not his brain. Google Maps. He argued the directions should have come with a warning. Maybe don't walk into oncoming traffic. The court threw it out, but the fact it even reached a courtroom says everything about modern humanity. We've officially reached the stage where people trust their phones more than their eyeballs. Imagine cavemen suing the stars because constellations led them to a cliff. The irony is, GPS already does warn you, with a giant glowing line that literally avoids highways. But no, this guy saw a turn right and thought, yeah, I guess I live here now. 31. A New York man sued his college for $72,000 because he didn't get a job after graduation. His argument was that the school misled him into believing a degree would equal employment. He even demanded they refund his tuition. Imagine going into court and saying, "Your Honor, I'd like my money back because reality was disappointing." Honestly, it's the most relatable lawsuit on this list, but still absurd. Colleges promise education, not a golden Willy Wonka ticket to employment. If this case succeeded, every liberal arts student would have a class action lawsuit the size of the national debt. The court dismissed it, probably while muttering, "Welcome to adulthood, kid." The real irony is that he still ended up with a job, as the punchline in every useless degree conversation since. So, in a way, the lawsuit worked, just not how he hoped. 32. In Australia, a man sued his employer because his boss wouldn't stop farting near him. He claimed it was workplace harassment, a hostile environment, literally. His testimony included phrases like flatulence as a form of bullying, which is the kind of sentence that makes legal history books worth reading. The boss admitted he may have farted occasionally, but denied it was targeted. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Victoria, which had to officially declare that farting, while unpleasant, does not count as harassment. Imagine being a judge, wearing robes of authority, listening to a man describe crop dusting as psychological warfare. This isn't law, it's South Park fan fiction. The man lost the case, but let's be honest, he already lost the second he said, "Your Honor, I was attacked by farts," out loud. 33. A man in Oregon sued his doctor for leaving a sponge inside him during surgery. Now, normally, this would be a valid malpractice case, except he wasn't suing for medical damages, he was suing for theft. His argument was that the sponge was his property now, since it was inside his body. He even demanded compensation for loss of use. Imagine a courtroom where lawyers are arguing over sponge ownership like it's a stolen Picasso. The judge threw it out, clarifying that medical tools left inside you do not suddenly become personal belongings. Which is a shame because otherwise half of America could be walking around as unwilling storage lockers, legally entitled to bill hospitals like U-Haul. Honestly, the man should have just sold it on eBay as lightly used surgical sponge, one-of-a-kind sentimental value, guaranteed bidding war. 34. A man in Texas tried to sue God's son. No, not metaphorically. He filed paperwork against Jesus Christ, claiming Jesus had failed to protect him from Satan and therefore owed him damages. The court dismissed it immediately, not because it was insane, though it was, but because the man didn't provide an address to serve Jesus with the summons. Imagine a process server showing up at a church with an envelope, asking if anyone has forwarding info for the Messiah. Honestly, I wish it had gone further, just to see a courtroom forced to debate whether Jesus technically counts as a U.S. resident. This wasn't a lawsuit, it was biblical fan fiction with paperwork. Somewhere out there, this man is still waiting for Jesus to appear in court, holding a briefcase, ready to testify. Spoiler, it's not happening. 35. In 2009, a Romanian prisoner sued his prison for not being free. Yes, while actively serving a sentence for murder, he claimed his human rights were violated because he wasn't allowed to, quote, enjoy liberty. That's like suing the ocean for being wet. The court dismissed it immediately, but just imagine the paperwork. Some poor clerk had to type out, "Plaintiff complains about imprisonment while in prison." The irony is, he was technically right. He wasn't free, but that's because, murder. The guy tried to turn a felony conviction into a Yelp review. 1 star. Prison didn't have enough freedom. He should have just gone the full distance and asked for damages in the form of Uber credits to escape. Honestly, if this had worked, every prisoner on Earth would have filed for emotional distress within the hour, creating the world's dumbest jailbreak, powered entirely by paperwork. 36. In the UK, a man sued PlayStation because his console ruined his marriage. His claim was that he got too addicted to gaming, ignored his wife, and she left him. Translation: he played Call of Duty instead of doing the dishes. Imagine being his lawyer, standing in court explaining, "Your Honor, it wasn't his fault. It was the graphics." By that logic, Netflix owes us all for failed relationships. The best part? He claimed Sony should have installed a responsibility feature to stop him from playing too much. Basically, he wanted his PlayStation to parent him. The case was tossed, but not before making the news, which means his wife got to watch her ex-husband humiliate himself on an international stage. Forget divorce court. This man managed to file a lawsuit that doubled as the saddest marriage proposal to a video game console in history. 37. One woman tried to sue her cable company because too much good TV ruined her social life. She argued that the endless stream of shows kept her homebound, isolated, and antisocial. Yes, she claimed she was essentially kidnapped by Friends reruns. She even tried to frame it as a health hazard, saying the binge-watching lifestyle had wrecked her physical condition. Which is funny because she had the easiest solution in human history, the power button. But no, she wanted damages instead. Imagine dragging executives from Comcast into court and accusing them of creating must-see TV. That's not negligence, that's their business model. The court tossed it, obviously, but part of me wishes they hadn't. Just so we could get a legal precedent where Ross and Rachel's breakup is considered a federally recognized public health crisis. Honestly, if lawsuits like this worked, Netflix would already be a war crime. 38. A man in Colorado sued the makers of Hot Pockets because he burned his mouth. He claimed the food should come with a warning label, which is hilarious because Hot Pockets already come with the most honest warning label in history. They're called Hot Pockets. That's literally the brand. The guy basically sued them for false honesty, for being exactly what they said they were. Imagine standing in court and arguing, "Your Honor, the food labeled molten cheese pouch contained molten cheese." The judge dismissed it, but honestly, I kind of sympathize. Everyone who's ever eaten a Hot Pocket knows the outer crust is frozen solid, while the inside is hotter than the surface of the sun. It's culinary Russian roulette. Still, suing over it? That's not justice. That's Darwinism with legal fees. The only true crime here is that he kept eating it long enough to file paperwork. 39. In 2006, a man sued NBC because Fear Factor was too disgusting. His claim was that watching people eat rats made him nauseous, disoriented, and led to emotional trauma. Translation: he voluntarily watched a show called Fear Factor, then got scared. He even demanded damages because the rat eating scene caused him to injure himself when he jumped up and ran into a door. Imagine Joe Rogan testifying in court, "Yes, Your Honor, the cheese-covered rats were consensual." The case was thrown out, but it's such a perfect metaphor for humanity. A guy suing television for working too well. The irony is, Fear Factor was literally advertised as the show that will gross you out. That was the whole point. Suing them for being disgusting is like suing The Bachelor for being fake. If this had worked, reality TV as a genre would have gone extinct overnight, which, honestly, might have been a blessing. 40. A man once sued McDonald's for making him fat. Not once, not twice, multiple times. He argued that fast food chains intentionally hooked people with addictive products and misleading ads, making obesity their fault. And while yes, McDonald's does market salads that have more calories than a Big Mac, the court wasn't buying it. They dismissed it, noting that most adults know fried food isn't a diet plan. The funniest part? He claimed he had no idea fast food could be unhealthy until it was too late. Really? You thought the thing called a double quarter pounder with cheese was part of the food pyramid? Imagine going through life thinking Ronald McDonald is your personal nutritionist. Honestly, if this had succeeded, half of America would have lined up for settlement checks in the form of McNuggets. Instead, the judge reminded him that the golden arches are not a warranty. They're a warning sign. 41. A man in Canada sued the makers of beer for making him less attractive. He argued that years of beer commercials had convinced him that drinking would make him popular with women. After a decade of trying, he concluded it did the opposite. So naturally, he demanded damages for false advertising. Imagine the evidence file for this case. Probably just 20 years of sad selfies at bars. The court dismissed it, but not before forcing everyone in the room to realize this man's entire romantic strategy boiled down to, if I drink enough. Budweiser, a model will appear. The worst part? He wasn't even wrong about the ads. Beer companies have basically been promising liquid charisma since the invention of television. But the court's message was clear. If you're ugly when you're sober, you're just a drunk, ugly person after 4 pints. No damages awarded. 42. A guy in Ohio sued the Cleveland Browns because their games were too boring. He argued that as a paying fan, he was entitled to reasonable entertainment, and watching the Browns lose didn't qualify. Which is bold, considering the Browns have been disappointing fans since roughly the invention of football. He even demanded compensation for mental anguish caused by enduring their season. Imagine a jury deliberating, does watching your team fumble count as cruel and unusual punishment? The court tossed it, but let's be honest. If any team deserves a lawsuit for emotional damage, it's the Browns. Or maybe the Jets. The best part? He filed it during one of their famously bad losing streaks, which means his case was basically, they were too bad, Your Honor. Which makes me wonder, if teams could actually be sued for sucking, professional sports would go bankrupt instantly. 43. A man in California sued BMW because he claimed one of their motorcycles gave him a permanent erection. He argued that the bike's vibrations caused nerve damage, leading to 4 years of constant arousal. Yes, 4 years. Imagine having to testify about that in open court. Your Honor, I was trapped in a state of relentless readiness. The lawsuit demanded compensation for physical harm and emotional distress, though, honestly, this guy probably just ruined motorcycles for everyone else. The court eventually dismissed it, but not before turning a courtroom into an R-rated comedy special. Somewhere, the BMW legal team had to write a serious response to the phrase, chronic erection caused by motorbike. If you ask me, this isn't a lawsuit. It's a Craigslist missed connection in disguise. You, me, and my motorcycle. It was a wild ride. Too wild. 44. One New York woman sued her local city government because she tripped over her own toddler. She argued that the city should have done more to prevent her from falling inside her own home. Yes, she blamed the government for not babysitting her kid. The court dismissed it instantly, but not before forcing city officials to actually respond. Imagine the paperwork. Defendant denies responsibility for plaintiff's child being a tiny, mobile human. If this case had worked, every clumsy parent in the world would have filed lawsuits for skinned knees. Honestly, the only person she should have sued was herself, and even then, the damages would have just been her kid's piggy bank money. Somewhere out there, that toddler probably grew up and sued her right back for emotional damage from being called Exhibit A. 45. A man in the U.S. sued God again, but this time, it was because lightning hit his house. He argued that since God is supposedly in control of weather, he should be financially liable for property damage, which makes sense if you've never read an insurance policy. The court, once again, had to dismiss it, citing the small problem of no mailing address for God. But the funniest part is, technically, if this worked, every insurance company would go out of business overnight. Imagine Allstate filing counterclaims against the Almighty. Your Honor, we'd like to call Jesus as a hostile witness. The whole case just proves humans will sue anything with a name, up to and including the creator of the universe. Honestly, at this point, God should probably file a countersuit for defamation. 46. In one of my favorite cases of weaponized stupidity, a man sued an airline for not upgrading him to first class after he'd bought an economy ticket. His argument? That he looked like a first-class passenger and therefore should have been seated with them. Which, wow. Imagine striding into court with that level of confidence. The airline responded by pointing out, correctly, that first class is determined by money, not vibes. The court dismissed it, but not before confirming what we all already know. Entitlement has no ceiling. The real kicker? He wanted damages for emotional distress caused by being forced to walk past first-class passengers while finding his seat. Translation: he had to experience reality. Honestly, if this lawsuit worked, we'd all be suing Delta for not pretending we're billionaires. 47. A man once sued Disney because Goofy, the mascot, hugged him too hard. He argued the hug caused back pain and emotional trauma. Yes, emotional trauma from Goofy, which is extra hilarious, because Goofy's whole character is built on clumsy accidents. That's his brand. Imagine walking into court describing how a 6-foot-tall cartoon dog broke you emotionally. Somewhere in that courtroom, lawyers had to say the words, "Plaintiff alleges excessive hug force." The case was settled out of court, which means Disney probably paid him hush money to avoid the PR nightmare of Goofy on trial. I wish they hadn't. I wanted a courtroom sketch of Goofy sitting at the defendant's table, ears drooping while a judge scolds him for reckless affection. Honestly, if Goofy hugs are illegal, half of Disneyland should be in prison. 48. A man in Florida sued Burger King because his Whopper looked smaller than the picture on the menu. He argued that the advertised burger was at least 35% larger than the sad reality in his wrapper. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. But suing over it? That's like suing Instagram filters for making people look hot. His lawsuit even demanded damages for burger disappointment. The court tossed it, but it sparked a wave of similar cases against fast food chains, which means lawyers now have to debate, with straight faces, whether a cheeseburger is legally allowed to catfish customers. Honestly, this case might be dumb, but it's also relatable. Who hasn't unwrapped a burger and thought, "Wow, that looks like a crime scene compared to the commercial?" The difference is, most of us just eat it. This man filed a lawsuit with ketchup stains. 49. In one infamous case, a man sued the devil. Not a company called Devil, not a guy nicknamed Devil. No, the literal devil. He argued Satan had repeatedly ruined his life with misfortunes, temptations, and bad luck, which, to be fair, is a pretty solid excuse for failure. Your Honor, I didn't cheat on my taxes. The devil made me do it. The court dismissed it, of course, because, again, no mailing address for hell. But just think about the precedent this could have set. If suing the devil worked, every bad hangover, breakup, or stubbed toe would be grounds for litigation. Honestly, if I were the devil, I'd have shown up to court just to troll him. Imagine the transcript. Satan, please state your full name for the record. 50. A woman in California sued the makers of Frozen because the song Let It Go gave her emotional distress. She claimed her kids sang it nonstop, driving her insane, and therefore Disney owed her damages. Honestly, she wasn't wrong about the suffering. Every parent in 2013 deserved hazard pay for enduring that soundtrack. But turning it into a lawsuit, that's a bold move. Imagine lawyers forced to argue about the psychological warfare of Idina Menzel's vocals. The case went nowhere, but it left behind one haunting truth. If lawsuits could fix earworms, we'd all be rich. Personally, I think Disney should have just settled by sending her a different soundtrack to suffer through. Like, congratulations, here's Baby Shark on a loop. Good luck. 51. And finally, the crown jewel. In 2010, a man in Montana sued himself. Yes, himself. He claimed he had violated his own civil rights by drinking alcohol and committing crimes, and because he had no income, he demanded the state pay the damages to him. It's the ultimate legal Ouroboros, suing yourself and making taxpayers pick up the bill. The judge dismissed it, of course, but not before acknowledging that this man had achieved a level of stupidity so pure it looped back around into genius. Think about it. Every bad decision you've ever made could technically be grounds to sue yourself. Ate Taco Bell at 2 a.m.? Sue. Texted your ex? Sue. Spent 6 hours on YouTube watching raccoon videos? Sue. This man didn't just file a lawsuit. He invented a business model. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why stupidity always finds a way to sue itself. Mic dropped. And there you have it. Proof that humanity will sue anything with a pulse. Or better yet, no pulse at all. Judges, lawyers, mascots, pants, God himself. Nobody is safe from paperwork filed by the terminally stupid. It's less a legal system and more a daycare with gavels. But hey, I want to know what you think. Which lawsuit deserves the dumbest human award? Drop your pic in the comments, or better yet, share the most ridiculous complaint you've ever witnessed. I guarantee it's not the last time we'll dig through this circus. Hit like, hit subscribe, and prepare yourself. Because if this list proved anything, it's that the stupidity pipeline is very much still open.